I've heard Starfleet officers don't want families because they complicate their lives. In this Star Trek retrospective, I want to take a look back at Jennifer Sisko, portrayed by the lovely Felicia Bell, and I want to ask the question, why were the families of Starfleet officers aboard the starships when they were encountering a hostile alien intelligence for the first time? Hey, all, I have a quick ask from this side of the camera. Please smash that like button and also consider subscribing to the channel if you are not subscribed. And now on with our feature presentation. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to Big Discussions 76, Entertainment and Media. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar. You can see by my subtitle there, I am a scientist, author, blogger, and a content creator. And in this video, I want to take a look back at Jennifer Sisko from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, portrayed by the very lovely Felicia Bell. But I also want to ask a question about that story. And that question involves, why were families aboard the starships when they were encountering the Borg for the first time? I'm going to get to that at the end of this video. But before I get there, I want to talk about my history with Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And then I want to talk about Jennifer Sisko, played by Felicia Bell. And then I will get into the question about why families were aboard those starships when they encountered the Borg for the first time. I thought about splitting this into two videos not long ago, but Jennifer Sisko was in the Deep Space Nine series for just, short installments and short snippets that I think it's appropriate for her to share this video with that particular question. All right, so for those of you who have been here, you know that I was a Trekkie growing up. For those of you who are new, well, I was a Trekkie growing up. I grew up with reruns of the original series with William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy in the original crew. I grew up with the original movies, and I had Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 3 and Star Trek 4 on VHS. And I watched those videos. I watched those movies ad nauseum, to the point where, at least for Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 3, I had most of those lines memorized. I had all of those scenes memorized. I had, most of those classic lines between Kirk and Khan and Spock and Savick and Kirk and Commander Krug and Sulu and Chekhov. I had all of those lines memorized. And I even somewhere have the CDs of those Star Trek 2 and those Star Trek 3 soundtracks. And on my Spotify account, I have Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 3 downloaded. And I was listening to those at work last week when I was working on my regulatory documents. So I go way back with Star Trek. And as I went into as I progressed into my teens, our Friday nights were marked by eating nice, tasty buffalo pizza and chicken wings while watching Star Trek The Next Generation. And then when I got into college at my HBCU, Johnson C. Smith University in Charlotte, North Carolina, I shout out to Marcus Williams, who says I only talk about the University of Michigan, and I never reference our HBCU in my content. So Marcus, I just did that. But many of my Saturday nights at JCSU, Johnson C. Smith University, many of my Saturday nights were spent well, at least before going out to parties, I would sit in my room and watch Star Trek Deep Space Nine, starring Avery Brooks as Captain Benjamin Sisko. And that ended up being my favorite Star Trek series. As much as I watched the original series via reruns, and as much as I loved Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 3 and numerous episodes of The Next Generation, Star Trek Deep Space Nine ended up being my favorite series for the cast, for the writing, for the darkness, for the complexity, the spirituality, the religion, the wars, all of it. Star Trek Deep Space Nine ended up being my favorite series, and it very much, in a lot of ways, reflected our world in terms of our government, geopolitics, the complexities of religion, relationships, all of it. Star Trek Deep Space Nine was my favorite series. Now, I've done some retrospectives on some of my favorite aspects of the Star Trek franchise thus far. You can look in my catalog for those. And for you Trekkies out there, I plan to make more. Maybe I should just make this entire channel about Star Trek at this point. But there are, so Star Trek Deep Space Nine was my favorite series out of all of them. But as we progress further and further past the golden age of Star Trek, because the stuff they're making now, it doesn't come anywhere near the original content. As we move further and further past that golden age of Star Trek, people are making some really, really compelling content here on YouTube using artificial intelligence, not just for Star Trek, but also for Star Wars. But I'm talking about Star Trek here, so we're going to focus on that. But this video was in part inspired by a video called Star Trek Invasion, created by Forged by Light. I'm going to put that link below in the description box for this video. And that video, that masterpiece, was a recreation of the Battle of Wolf 359. So in Star Trek The Next Generation, we see the Enterprise encounter the Enterprise D, captained by Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Make it so, number one. We see it encounter the Borg cube, and we see the Borg cube chase the Enterprise because they wanted to kidnap Jean-Luc Picard and turn him into Locutus, which they did. That gave them all of the intel on Starfleet that they needed to pretty much decimate any Starfleet vessel that they came into contact with, which they did. But we never saw what the rest of the fleet was doing and how the rest of the fleet was strategizing and planning to encounter the Borg cube. Let me slow down. We never saw how the rest of the fleet was organizing to encounter the Borg cube and attempt to turn it back. And the video by Forged Light, which is in the description box, it shows us that. Okay, so it shows us the Saratoga and all of the other ships gather together and attempt to form battle plans to encounter and to turn back the Borg cube. So that's in part where this video came from. That link is below. So shout out to Forged Light. And let me go on to the next part of this video. So the reason that video by Forged Light stood out to me is because that Battle of Wolf 359, that's how Star Trek Deep Space Nine starts. We see Commander Benjamin Sisko, clean-faced. He's got his short black hair at that point, but he's got a clean face. He doesn't get his goatee until I think season 3 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. But he's aboard the Saratoga, along with some other starships. They are taking on the Borg cube, and Locutus is aboard the cube, so he's feeding the Borg in real time all of the strengths and weaknesses of Starfleet. And so the Borg cube cuts through the Starfleet vessels like a hot knife through butter. They decimate those ships. And if you watched Star Trek: The Next Generation, you could see when the Enterprise enters the sector where the Borg cube is. I think they were headed towards Earth because the Borg cube was going to Earth. They could see the wreckage of all of their sister ships as they proceeded through that sector, whichever sector that was, via impulse power. So it was like a graveyard of ships and debris in that path of the Borg's ship. So that series starts with the Battle of Wolf 359. Star Trek Deep Space Nine starts with that battle. And so we see the USS Saratoga try to engage the Borg cube along with the other ships. And we see the USS Saratoga get decimated by that Borg cube. And certain parts of the hull get compromised, the shields collapse, the warp core, if I recall correctly, the warp core is breached. And anyone who's watched Star Trek knows once the warp core of your ship is breached, you only have a certain amount of time to either eject that warp core or you only have a certain amount of time to evacuate the ship because that ship is going, it's going to go kablooey. So in that first stage of that first episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, once the Saratoga's warp core is breached, the computer says, okay, the warp core is breached. You guys only have a certain amount of time to evacuate everybody, get to the escape pod. So Captain Sisko, or should I say Commander Sisko at that time, he goes to the nursery, I believe, to get Jake. And he also goes to get Jennifer. And he's able to rescue Jake, but Jennifer is trapped underneath debris of collapsed structures from the ship. And Ben tries as hard as he can to lift those structures and to get her out. And the blue guy, who I think is an Andorian, he takes his tricorder and he's reading her life signs and he realizes she's dead. And he says, Ben, it's over. We got to go. We got to go. And Commander Sisko says, I just can't leave her. And he has to rip Ben Sisko away from Jennifer's dead body there. And then they get on the escape pods and they show the escape pods jettisoning from the Saratoga. And Ben is sitting there watching with just this grim look on his face. And we see the ship explode within that tractor beam from the Borg. So he had to watch his beautiful wife. He had to watch that ship explode, knowing that she had died, but also that there was nothing that he could do. And so that's it. It was a very, very sobering way to start a series. And of course, he meets Jean-Luc Picard and he reminds Jean-Luc Picard that we met once at the Battle of Wolf 359. And Captain Picard says, and to himself, he kind of pauses and he realizes, what had happened. But that was our introduction to Benjamin Sisko. That was our introduction to Jennifer Sisko. And that was the beginning of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. It was a great series, but it started with tragedy. She is a part of my past. She's no longer alive. She was a most important part of my existence. But I lost her some time ago. All right, so if you couldn't tell from the beginning of this video, even though we only saw her a few times, I was in love with Jennifer Sisko, portrayed by the lovely Felicia Bell. Please bear with me for a few minutes as I gush over Jennifer Sisko, played by Felicia Bell. So we only saw her for a little bit in the beginning. And of course, she was all throughout that first episode as the prophets of the Celestial Temple met their emissary and they helped him realize, you keep existing in this moment because his grief, it kept going on and on and on. So some of the prophets, or one of the prophets, took the shape of Jennifer Sisko, and they kept coming back to him, and they kept taking Benjamin back to those moments where he first met her on the beach. And oh my God, she was gorgeous. She had that beautiful beautiful athletic figure, very shapely, nice and shapely in her two-piece bikini, I believe. Was it a two-piece or a one-piece? But long flowing black hair, beautiful brown skin, full lips. Jennifer Sisko, portrayed by Felicia Bell. Very feminine, very soft and tender, but suspicious of the young, aspiring Starfleet officer. As her mother said, beware of Starfleet officers, beware of young Starfleet officers who are looking to capture your heart. But Benjamin had a way of doing that, and they decided to form a family. Another key scene was when they were in the orchard, and they both stood up like this, and they heard the sound of a child's play, and that's when they decided to have Jake. There was a moment where they showed her actually delivering Jake in the delivery room, and they show her again dying. And then when Ben is in the wormhole talking to the prophets, there's a scene of fire, and they show her walking out of that fire in her bathing suit, and she tells him, you exist here. Why do you keep coming back here? You say you moved on, but you exist here. And that's our first time seeing her. And we see Jennifer again in the mirror episode where they bring her back. And I'm trying to think if we only see her in those two instances. But she was portrayed by the very lovely Felicia Bell. And the writing, that scene, her beauty, her intelligence. She was a Starfleet officer as well. And losing her the way that Benjamin lost her, as a viewer, that really, really grips you when you're watching that. And you really form an attachment not only to Benjamin, but also to her, even though we don't see her much throughout the duration of those 7 series. So the very lovely Felicia Bell. I did some very brief research on her before this video. Felicia Bell, this is courtesy of Wikipedia. Felicia M. Bell is an American former actress, best known for her roles in Days of Our Lives and General Hospital. So she did the soap opera circuit in the 80s, as well as her portrayal as Jennifer Sisko in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. She also starred in the first season of the series Nightman. After retiring from acting in 2007, Bell became a holistic nutritionist. So she's from Southern California. She's from Los Angeles. So that's probably how she broke into the acting field. But she is now a holistic nutritionist. And she is 64 years old. She might not like me giving her age, but I'm sure she's still stunning nonetheless. Let me check her age again just to make sure. Yeah, according to Wikipedia, she is 64 years old right now, and she stands 5'8", but I'm sure she's just as stunning right now as she was 20 years ago when the series aired. Jennifer Sisko, portrayed by Felicia Bell. None of your past experiences helped prepare you for this consequence, so you choose to exist here. It is not linear. Now, I only have recollection of Jennifer being in those 2 episodes. I feel like she was in more. I feel like they brought Jennifer Sisko back for more episodes. But if you're watching out there, I'm a scientist and my brain is overloaded with all kinds of information. Right now, I have a day job. I create content. I just published a book, which I'm trying to sell, which I'll talk about at the end of this video. But I can't remember if she was in more than just those 2 episodes. So you hardcore Trekkies out there who know for sure, let me know in the comments section if Jennifer was in more than those 2 episodes. Yeah, Cassidy Yates, portrayed by Penny. What was it? Penny Marshall? No, not Penny Marshall. That was Penny Marshall was from Laverne and Shirley. Let me look this up really quickly. Cassidy Yates, Sisko, Penny Johnson. It wasn't Penny Marshall. It was Penny Johnson. She was lovely too, but there was something about Jennifer Sisko portrayed by Felicia Bell. Okay, let me finish this video up. So the question, I thought of this question when I watched a Forged by Lights video. Why, and people do this with works of art, with movies and TV series, they go back afterwards and they poke holes in them and they ask, why did this happen? This didn't make any sense. But it's worth asking, why were families and children, why were families and children aboard those starships when they were going to encounter the Borg for the first time? I think the Enterprise D called ahead and said, hey, they're hostile. They've kidnapped Jean-Luc. They've turned him into Locutus. These are hostile beings. Why would the Starfleet, why would their officers, their command chain, why would they not order the families and the children to be evacuated from those starships, knowing that the Borg were hostile? Now, that's how Star Trek Deep Space Nine started. Obviously, if they didn't do that, there would be no series. That whole story arc wouldn't be there for Captain Sisko. But that's something that I thought about when I watched Forged by Lights video, Star Trek Invasion, Forged by Lights video, Star Trek Invasion. That's what I thought about. I said, why were they on there? Why didn't they? In the Enterprise D, there were children, as you know, there were children aboard the Enterprise D. And I know that Star Trek, Starfleet wanted the families with their commanding officers. I'm sure the commanding officers wanted that too, but it just didn't make sense to me that those families and those children would be on board when they encountered the Borg for the first time. But let me know what you think about that. Did you guys think and ponder the same thing when watching the start of Star Trek Deep Space Nine and even watching some episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation? Why were families and children aboard those ships when they were embarking on, in some instances, hazardous missions from which it was unclear that those crew members would return? Why would you have your families and your children aboard those starships? Hey all, before I end this video, I have to give a shameless plug for my book. I talked about it during my content. I am a newly self-published author, and I published my book, The Engineers, A Western New York Basketball Story, Part 1, Innocent Basketball Dreams. Since late 2024, I've really been marketing this pretty strongly. So it looks like it's just a basketball story, but it's a life story. It's a story about the human spirit, a la Stephen King, although this is creative nonfiction. So it's a story about learning the game, but also learning the world. Because at a young age, sports teach you about the adult world, and you carry those lessons into the adult world. So it's a story about learning the world, learning how to struggle, learning how to persevere, particularly as a young man from the inner city who did not have all the the necessary tools. So it's about acquiring the tools that you need on the fly to navigate life. I think that the title throws people off a little bit, and I'm realizing I have to explain this to a large degree. So when you think about the engineers, that was our high school basketball team. All of our sports teams were called engineers. Hutch Tech High School was a STEM school: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So the title is very, very reminiscent of the Titans from Remember the Titans, the movie Remember the Titans. When you think about Titans, Titans actually come from Roman and Greek mythology, if I recall correctly. But the Titans were the football team for T.C. Williams High School right here in Alexandria, Virginia. So the title is a play on words. It was my high school basketball team. So the engineers, the Titans, the engineers, the Titans. That's where that comes from. So for my YouTube viewers, if you want a signed hard copy, I'm selling those for $25. That includes shipping and handling. And the paperback is on sale via me as well, via a signed copy. And those are going for $22 from me. The book is also available on Amazon for $35 for the hardcover and $27 for the paperback edition. And the ebook is available on Amazon as well. And the paperback is also available on Ingram Spark for $27 as well. But I'm discounting the hardcover and the paperback for my YouTube viewers and subscribers. My Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, and Zelle information are in the description box. You just have to send me your mailing information via email, or if you can, there are ways you can send that information in Cash App and PayPal as well. And I'm sure you could do that in Venmo and Zelle as well. Long story short, I just need your mailing information as well, as I will be the one mailing the book to you. I've heard Starfleet officers don't want families because they complicate their lives. So with that, everyone, I'm going to wrap this video up. Let me know what you think about anything I've said in this video. Were you a fan of Jennifer Sisko like I was? Jennifer Sisko, portrayed by the very, very lovely Felicia Bell. Were you a fan? Were you not a fan? Were you a fan of Major Kira, Dax, Cassidy Yates, Lita, or anyone else? Were you a fan? One of the Duras sisters? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, let me quit while I'm ahead. But let me know what you think in the comments section below. And did it also occur to you, why were families and children aboard those starships when they were encountering the Borg? Let me know what you think. This is Big Discussions 76, Entertainment and Media. My name is Dr. Anwar Yusuf Dunbar. Please like, share, and subscribe. And yeah, I think I will wrap this up here. The links to my book project and my newsletter, and if you want to purchase a copy of my book, those 4 payment methods are in the description box below. And that's all I've got. So look out for the next one. And thank you for watching. As always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Always try to do your best. Take care, and I will talk to you the next time. Live long and prosper.